On this Friday night, Judgment Day for a Toronto police officer guilty of a beating that left a young black man blinded in one eye.
I would like to show appreciation for the community supporting me.
Michael Kovrig's wife amps up the pressure.
He should not have to suffer anymore for something he has not done.
Will Ottawa get tougher with Beijing? Answering the calls and cries for help.
So this has definitely not been a normal year.
The Kids Help Phone takes unprecedented measures. And the sports world's pandemic playbook.
There are going to be some people who get sick.
How to get back in the game after this unusual intermission.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin with the verdict in a case involving a violent confrontation between a black teenager, an off-duty Toronto police officer, and his brother. An Ontario judge has found Constable Michael Theriault guilty of assault. Christian Theriault was acquitted of the assault charge, as well as a charge of obstruction of justice. The brothers were accused of chasing 19-year-old Dafonte Miller and beating him so badly with a pipe, Miller lost his left eye. Global's Shallima Maharaj is following the developments. Shallima, what do we know about how the judge arrived at his decision?
Well, Robin, there was already a great deal of attention surrounding the trial of Toronto Police Constable Michael Theriault and his brother Christian. The focus has since become amplified. Now, Justice Joseph DeLuca acknowledged the social context surrounding this case, but said it wasn't his task to conduct a public inquiry into race and policing or to deliver a verdict sought by the public. It's been more than 3 years since a violent altercation changed the course of Dafonte Miller's life. Now, at the conclusion of the trial for the two men accused of beating him.
We've come a long way, you know, because I remember the night when this happened to me, I ended up getting charged, you know, and now we're in a situation where an officer has been held accountable to some extent.
Justice Joseph DeLuca read out his 62-page judgment via YouTube. It took more than 4 hours. The brothers were charged with aggravated assault and obstruction of justice. Christian Theriault was acquitted on both counts, while Toronto Police Constable Michael Theriault was found guilty of the lesser charge of assault.
How could it happen that neither the Toronto Police Service nor the Durham Regional Police Service, in view of these catastrophic injuries, never contacted the Special Investigations Unit?
Ontario's police watchdog was eventually contacted by Miller's lawyer, Julian Falconer, after months had already gone by. During the trial, the defense argued the brothers caught Miller and his friends breaking into their parents' pickup truck. The court heard the brothers allege Miller attacked them and they acted in self-defense. In his testimony, Miller said he saw the longer-haired man, Michael Theriault, an off-duty cop, wielding a pipe. He also told the court he was struck with that object. Justice DeLuca was satisfied that he was hit in the face with the pipe, but he also accepted the assertion of a medical expert that the injury to Miller's left eye, which had to be surgically removed, was likely the result of a punch. But at the end, DeLuca could not conclude guilt beyond a reasonable doubt on the aggravated assault and obstruction charges. The crowd outside the courthouse appeared extremely deflated when the judge told Christian Theriault that he was free to go. Michael Theriault, on the other hand, is due back in court in July. Robin?
Shallima Maharaj in Toronto. The case of Meng Wanzhou is dominating headlines again tonight. Defense and security experts are now urging the federal government to ignore calls for a prisoner swap. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says his government is working diplomatic channels to get Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor out of a Chinese jail without buckling to foreign pressure. Kovrig's wife spoke to Global News about the 18 agonizing months he spent behind bars. Michael Couture has the story.
It's already been 565 days. He should not have to suffer anymore for something he has not done.
You can hear the desperation in Vina Nadjibulla's voice. Michael Kovrig's wife broke her silence this week, demanding the Canadian government do more to bring her husband and Michael Spavor home. The two are separated, but she has been his advocate for months. In an interview on the West Block with Mercedes Stephenson, Nadjibulla says our government needs to be more forceful.
We need more leverage. We need more space to maneuver, and hopefully the conversations of this week have opened up a little bit more space for that.
And most of that conversation centered around a prisoner swap, the two Michaels, in exchange for Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou. The idea was suggested in a letter penned by 19 prominent Canadians. It was promptly quashed by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and another group of 33 who wrote an alternative missive saying Canada needs to stand up to China.
If we permit China to reorganize the international order under their model, we will see a walkback of the post-war order from 1945 in ways that we've only begun to imagine.
The group is suggesting applying Magnitsky sanctions, which focus on human rights abuses against Chinese officials responsible for the detention of Kovrig and Spavor. Asked about it again, Trudeau tried to be reassuring.
We have established processes, some public, some private and diplomatic behind the scenes, that maximize our chances of bringing these Canadians in difficulty home.
Case of the two Michaels, because they're being denied their diplomatic status, to the International Court of Justice, bring together a team of international jurists, because that would draw attention to it. Keep the pressure on China. They hate being embarrassed.
It's just another option our government might pursue behind closed doors while Kovrig and Spavor continue to wait behind bars. Robin.
Michael Couture in Ottawa. Thanks, Mike. And you can watch the extended interview with Michael Kovrig's wife this Sunday on the West Block with Mercedes Stevenson right here on Global. A charity associated with the Prime Minister's wife will dole out grants to student volunteers this summer. Justin Trudeau says the We charity was the best option to administer the Canada Student Service Grant. The program will provide eligible students with up to $5,000 for post-secondary education, depending on volunteer hours worked in the fight against COVID-19. Sophie Gregoire Trudeau is an ambassador of the charity, but the Prime Minister says the nonpartisan civil service made the choice, not him.
They came back and demonstrated that really the We organization is the only organization in Canada that has the scale and the ability to deliver volunteer opportunities for young people right across the country at all levels of organizations.
Trudeau adds the charity will not profit off the administration of the grant program. Quebec will resume its daily COVID-19 updates starting next week. The province was criticized after announcing it would be only once a week, even though it's still the worst-hit province in the country. Most of the deaths there have been in long-term care homes. Now the Canadian Red Cross is sending in 900 people as the military begins to withdraw. Members of the Canadian Armed Forces have been providing support in care homes since April. Quebec Premier François Legault had urged the military to keep at least 1,000 members in homes until the fall. The federal government says a small contingent will remain until the COVID-19 situation is stable.
But I want to be clear. The Canadian Armed Forces will not leave a facility until it is stable. Before leaving these facilities, they will again ensure that conditions are stable and that staff are well equipped to continue to meet their residents' needs.
The care homes endured deadly outbreaks of the novel coronavirus, as well as staffing shortages. There are now 16 confirmed COVID-19 cases linked to an outbreak at a nail salon in Kingston, Ontario. Public health officials have closed the business until further notice. 6 workers, including the owner, have tested positive for the virus, along with 10 other people. Public health officials say some employees came to work while symptomatic. Physical distancing at the salon was also an issue, and the business did not keep accurate records of its clients. The World Health Organization says it needs more than $31 billion over the next 12 months to develop and roll out COVID-19 tests, treatments, and vaccines. We know testing is critical in the fight against the pandemic, as countries around the world continue to see a surge in cases. Here's a look at some of the new concerning hotspots. Japan has recorded more than 100 new cases in one day, its highest daily total since May 9th. Overall, there are now more than 18,000 cases there. Mexico is recording more than 202,000 total cases, with more than 25,000 deaths. Italy has sent soldiers to a coastal town near Naples after an outbreak at an apartment complex. Hundreds of migrant workers living there ended up in confrontations with residents. About 50 people living in the abandoned buildings have tested positive for the virus. The U.S. Vice President who leads the White House's coronavirus task force says all 50 states and territories are opening up safely and responsibly, despite the fact that cases have surged in at least 32 states. As Jennifer Johnson reports, younger Americans now account for an ever-growing percentage of infections.
Members of the White House Coronavirus Task Force briefed Americans for the first time since late April as new cases of COVID-19 have broken records all week. The increase is skyrocketing among 18 to 34-year-olds in states like Florida, Texas, Arizona, and California. Doctors pleading with young adults to be more careful.
The chances are that if you get infected, that you're going to infect someone else. And then ultimately you will infect someone who's vulnerable.
In Florida, all bars have been ordered closed after that state hit a record high, close to 9,000 new cases. Bars closed in Texas, too. And Governor Greg Abbott has placed new limits on businesses and services as the infection rate in his state went over 10%. ICU beds in Houston are full. Doctors in several other states are also sounding the alarm.
I'm absolutely terrified that we're going to overwhelm the health care system, the hospitals and ICU, not in the fall, which is something that had worried me previously, but I'm worried about next week.
Notably absent from the briefing, U.S. President Donald Trump, who continues to blame the rapid increases on more testing. Vice President Mike Pence spent close to a half hour boasting about how well the Trump administration has handled the pandemic.
We have made truly remarkable progress in moving our nation forward.
But doctors are now warning parents and grandparents to be on alert.
You know if you have comorbidities, you know if you're over 80. We ask you if in these hot spots in these states that are having expansion in cases to continue to shelter as much as you can.
Hundreds of jurisdictions across the country are now mandating masks.
We can be either part of the solution or part of the problem.
The task force doctor is telling Americans, especially millennials, to step up all precautions, masks, physical distancing, and hand washing, as the U.S. death toll continues to rise. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
The Supreme Court of Canada has upheld a ruling that gives Uber drivers the green light to take on the company. The decision opens the door to a $400 million class action lawsuit against Uber. It's the next step in a fight for drivers to be recognized as employees, not contract workers. The suit is aimed at securing minimum wage, vacation pay, and other benefits. And Global News has confirmed Amazon Canada is facing a $200 million class action lawsuit involving delivery drivers. The suit was filed on behalf of about 2,500 people. They're seeking damages over alleged unpaid wages, including overtime, vacation, and meal breaks. The class action says drivers work for courier companies contracted by Amazon to deliver parcels, but the online retail giant is their true employer. Amazon Canada says we disagree with the allegations and expect to fully disprove them. A violent attack in the heart of Glasgow. Coming up, the rampage that sent several people, including a police officer, to hospital. Plus, lost and likely never to be found. The newest piece of space junk floating around. Six men are in hospital tonight, including a police officer, after a violent attack in Scotland. It happened at a hotel in Glasgow's downtown core. The suspect was quickly shot and killed by police. Investigators say this is not terrorism related, but as Europe Bureau Chief Goomansingh explains, they're still searching for a motive.
Loud racing police vehicles quickly clogged Glasgow's city centre.
This is a serious situation and none of us need to make it worse by sharing speculative accounts of what happened.
The investigation is not terror related, but disturbing nonetheless. It happened at Park Inn. Radisson Hotel Group confirms to Global News that the hotel was being used for temporary housing during the pandemic, and says we are deeply saddened by the tragic event that happened today on West George Street in Glasgow. We are working with the hotel owner and all of the relevant local authorities.
When dreadful things like this happen, they shock all of us to our core, but above all they should remind us of what unites us and not what divides us.
Video posted to social media by witnesses shows a chaotic scene. Authorities say all of the victims are men.
Officers were on the scene within 2 minutes and armed officers shortly afterwards, and the incident was quickly contained. A man was shot by armed police and has subsequently died. 6 other men are in hospital for treatment, including a 42-year-old police officer who is in a critical but stable condition.
As the investigation continues, police have not yet shared what prompted the attack or any details about the man killed. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, London.
A British teen will spend at least the next 15 years behind bars for throwing a child off a museum balcony. 18-year-old Jonty Bravery was sentenced today after being convicted of attempted murder. Last August, he tossed the 6-year-old boy from a 10th-floor viewing platform at London's Tate Modern Art Gallery. At the time, he told police he did it because he wanted to be on the news. The child survived the 30-meter fall but suffered a brain injury and various broken bones. He's now in a wheelchair. Still ahead, the calls for emotional support and the Canadians who answered.
You're watching Global National.
See that wrist mirror? A matching one is now orbiting in space. It detached from astronaut Chris Cassidy's spacesuit right as he exited the International Space Station. He was setting out for a 7-hour venture with veteran spacewalker Rob Bankin to replace batteries on a power channel. On the way, he added some space junk which NASA says won't pose a threat. The collateral damage from this pandemic is the heavy toll on our mental health. A new survey this week found 84% of respondents reported their mental health concerns had worsened since the outbreak. And as Jeff Semple reports, thousands of Canadians are now stepping up to offer support to those in need.
Ashley Cummings has struggled with her mental health and depression since she was a kid, and the COVID-19 pandemic hasn't been easy.
It just creates so many different points of stress, and you get wrapped up in those thoughts.
But when that stress becomes too much, Cummings reaches for her lifeline, a text message conversation with an anonymous stranger from Kids Help Phone.
Thank you for calling Kids Help Phone. How can I help you?
The charity has provided youth counseling services for 3 decades, typically contacted by around 400 young people every day. But that was before the biggest mental health crisis the organization has ever seen.
So this has definitely not been a normal year.
The pandemic and lockdown saw demand for Kids Help Phone services skyrocket, up 350%.
Young people across Canada are seeing heightened anxiety, feelings of isolation.
Overwhelmed, Kids Help Phone called for backup, asking ordinary Canadians to volunteer to provide emotional support over text message. It was a big ask. Kids Help Phone volunteers are required to undergo a 36-hour training course, a police background check, and then provide support to young people who in some cases have endured terrible suffering and abuse.
So in March, we put a call out.
And the response was overwhelming.
We had almost 9,000 Canadians raise their hand and say that they wanted to be a part of supporting young people, which to me was huge.
One of those volunteers says it's been a win-win.
There's very few volunteer opportunities, I believe, that you can walk at the end of your shift or walk at the end of your day and say, well, I potentially saved someone's life today.
And thanks to those volunteers, for the first time in its history, Kids Help Phone is now extending its services to adults.
We've seen over the time of COVID an increasing number of adults reaching out saying they have nowhere to go.
But that support is now just a text message away. Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
Anyone who needs mental health support can reach Kids Help Phone by calling, texting, or going online. The service is available 24 hours a day, and as we mentioned, it's for kids and adults. Up next, risk versus reward, the face-off of the return of pro sports in a pandemic. 2 weeks from today, NHL training camps are scheduled to get underway, but exactly where and how the players will return to the ice remains unclear, and time is of the essence. The league has said the playoffs will take place in hubs. Some Canadian cities were vying to host the games. Vancouver was believed to be a top pick, but as Eric Sorensen explains, it's no longer in the running.
Vancouver illustrates the dilemma in playing hockey and keeping healthy. It's a big city with COVID-19 well under control, but no longer being considered as one of the 2 hubs for NHL playoffs. The decision follows BC's commitment to health protocols that could have stopped play after a positive test.
Under no circumstances was I going to compromise in any way the health of people here in British Columbia, and we made that very clear.
It's a shame. Would have been good to have it.
Some fans are disappointed, but many support the decision.
And I think a lot of people would rather have a cautious approach to this rather than trying to, have an issue, flare up again.
Edmonton is one of 2 Canadian cities still in the running. Toronto is the other. Las Vegas is a front-runner south of the border, but COVID-19 is suddenly spiking in the United States.
The last week has been a really troubling one. So I would say right now the NHL and other professional sports league leaders are very nervous.
NHL players have been skating in small groups, but there is uncertainty before training camps begin. Montreal's star goaltender Carey Price says he still wants answers to questions. Others are optimistic a COVID-free bubble can be created.
I've been involved in a lot of the talks, and I'm pretty confident that once we get into hub cities, we'll be able to do a good job of keeping it out.
In golf, competitors can keep their distance. A single case may be isolated with less fear of spreading the virus. But team sports with a lot of physical contact is a huge challenge. The NBA has decided to restart in July at the Disney World complex in Florida, even though that state is now a COVID-19 hotspot and 16 players just tested positive. Major League Baseball plans a shortened season beginning next month. After players tested positive, the Toronto Blue Jays shut down their Florida training facility. There are skeptics.
The idea that you can assure the safety of any professional sport is beyond my comprehension.
Others say it's time to try.
There's going to be risk at this point. There's going to be positive tests. There are going to be some people who get sick. But at some point, we have to reopen society and get going.
Big league sports will start again this summer, but will they be able to finish? Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Friday. I'm Robin Gill. Tonight, Your Canada is Bowring Park in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. We'd love to see your corner of this country, so email your pictures to viewers@globalnational.com. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.